For loops are used when you need to run a piece of code repetitively. So if there's something that you need to do more than one time, rather than constantly write that statement over and over and over, you can actually put it in a loop. Now, for loops are generally used when you actually know how many things you have to loop through, or how many times you actually need to do something, and then stop. There are times when you actually don't know exactly how long you need to loop for, and you would use a different loop for that. But for loops is when you definitely have a beginning and an end. Okay? The syntax for our loop is as follows. We're going to have a for loop, and then we're inside of the parentheses, we're going to have the loop control statements. And there's usually three of them, right? Something to set the start of the loop, something that controls how long the loop goes for, where it ends, and then something that controls really the direction or how the loop moves through how you move through the loop. So we're going to do an example. In our example, we're actually just going to count up to 10 from 1. That's all we're going to do. So in our example here, we're going to start with our keyword of for. We have our parentheses there and our block where our code is going to go. Now, I said inside of here, you're going to actually set your start and your end. So you're going to set your start by creating a variable that gives you a starting point. Now, I'm creating a variable called I, which is kind of traditional. You're going to see that a lot. It's short for index, and it's going to start at 0. Now, I said I wanted to start ours at 1, so I'm going to change it. A lot of times you'll see it at 0, but we're going to start ours at 1. And now I'm going to test to see if I is less than a specific amount. Now, this is going to be how we choose where our loop ends. So I'm going to say as long as I is less than or equal to 10, right? Because I want it to stop at 10 as opposed to stopping before 10, right? And then after that, I have to have a way to move through this code or move through this loop. So I'm going to actually increment I each time the loop happens, right? So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to print out whatever the value of I is. I'm going to print it to the console. So I'm just going to say console log, and we're going to print out I. So that's all we're going to do. We're just going to print I to the screen every time. Okay, so I'm going to save this, and we can give this a run. And as you can see, I'm going to make this a little bigger. You can see I simply count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And what's actually happening, the flow of this, is as you start your for keyword, Java knows it's going to go into a loop. So it's going to create a variable. Now this variable is confined, only local to this for. So even though it's not inside of the block specifically, it's coming after our for loop declaration, right? So the JavaScript knows it's a for loop, and it's a part of that condition within our parentheses. So it's going to be confined to our for loop. It's not going to be able to be read anywhere else. We're going to set that value of I to 1. We end it with a semicolon because it is a normal statement. We're going to put 3 statements in here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to say, well, I can be no greater than 10. It could be equal to 10, but it can't be greater than 10. Right? So that's how we're setting that here. So now we know we start at 1 and we end at 10. The last statement, it doesn't have a semicolon because it's at the end, so it's the very last one. We actually increment I by 1. So if we're starting I at 1, if we're incrementing, we go to 2, 3, 4, and on and on and on. The only thing we're going to repeat each time is we're going to print to the console whatever value I is at the time, right? And as you can see, when you start out, it's 1. It checks is making sure that 1 is less than 10, and if it is, it'll do what's in the code, and then it's going to come over here, increase, and then start again. Now it's going to be 2. It's still less than 10. It comes down here and prints out that value and increases it again, and on and on and on until we get to the end of the loop. And that is how you do a for loop.